At first, there was nothing. Then there was a great explosion of light that scattered quadrillions of atoms across the universe. Eventually, some of these atoms would group with each other and settle into what we now know as Warcraft 3. While Warcraft 3 was known and loved by many, it would spawn a sacred child that would be loved by more still. Defense of the Ancients, or DotA. DotA would be destined to start a mainstream craze for multiplayer online battle arenas, or Mobas for the plebeian mind, and gamers everywhere suddenly had a plethora of Mobas to choose from. It was then that DotA's grandpappy, who spent the last 12 years giving money to his favorite offspring, noticed how much success his grandkid and his friends were making, and was like,
I want one.
Alright, we need to make a MOBA with all the characters from our games. What do we need? We could have a slow, meticulous laning phase that often determines the outcome of the game early on, despite our matches being more than half an hour long. How about all characters buying from a shared item pool? That forces us to balance every character around them. I know. How about making it a team game where a single player's poor plays empowers the other team to the point where the first team can rarely ever come back, encouraging toxicity and the flaming of anyone who's trying to learn the game or simply makes a mistake. These all sound like great ideas. But what if...
No!
Now, despite being very late to the party, releasing 12 years after the first Dota and 6 years after League of Legends, Heroes of the Storm immediately stood out from the plethora of MOBAs out there by pushing the envelope of what a MOBA really could be. From map design to playable characters, to game pacing and balance approach, Heroes of the Storm was and still is doing crazy new things and somehow just making them work. To the point where many of the most popular MOBAs that had been around for much longer began adopting ideas and designs from Heroes to make their games better or more interesting. Even if you personally haven't played Heroes before, if you've played other MOBAs, especially some of the big ones, you have likely felt the effect that Heroes of the Storm has had on it. Now, this video isn't a call-out video accusing other games of just ripping off the game I like. Heroes has, more than likely, taken some inspiration from its predecessors as well. All I want to do here is give some recognition where it's due to an overall great game that has helped improve others. Or at least make them more diverse in gameplay. Now, while I will talk about many other MOBAs in this video, understand I may talk more about League than others, mainly because I have more experience and knowledge of that game, not because I think it was more heavily inspired or that other MOBAs are worse or anything. With that out of the way, let's get started.
Who can grab me booty first?
Now, from the first Defense of the Ancients onwards, almost every MOBA revolved around a gold system of some kind. Sure, your abilities might do slightly more damage or have shorter cooldowns when you leveled up, but most of your power was gained by making money to spend on powerful items, earned either through defeating your opponents or playing Midget Murder Simulator. But there's something important about these systems that should be made clear. Gold systems are inherently, fundamentally, broken. Not only that, but they limit the design of characters in your game because your character needs to be not too powerful no matter which of your items they buy. Not only that, but it breeds toxicity among players because if you die, if you make a mistake, your opponent not only gets an advantage over you, but over your entire team. One player out of your entire team can be responsible for giving an enemy player enough currency to purchase godhood, which in turn makes it easier for them to kill your other teammates and therefore get more money. And that's a problem. But until Heroes of the Storm, this was considered a necessary evil, part of the MOBA package. You didn't fight it. Somebody was just bound to get stomped. and somebody was going to become a demigod by stomping them, and you just hoped that the stomping one would be you. But Heroes got rid of gold and item purchasing entirely, and replaced it with an XP system that made it a lot harder for one player to run away with the game, and made comebacks actually plausible. And while it would be hard to ask any of these older games to make such a drastic change, they did make their own attempts to address the problem, introducing bounty increases for dominating players, and giving their players free items. These were certainly improvements, but also brought their own balance issues, and, at least in my opinion, did not do nearly as good of a job at addressing this now decade-long issue as the Heroes team did. Now don't get me wrong, Heroes does still have games that feel like stomps, and if your teammate is dying constantly, that still stinks because your team is constantly outnumbered. But those of you who've never played Heroes before will be surprised by how much of a positive difference this makes. If an enemy player in your game stands out or is personally scary, it's because they are skilled, and not because they abused someone who wasn't. When you win a duel in-game, it's not because you're 3 items ahead of them, but because you're playing smarter. These are the rewarding feelings you want to give your players. So even though Heroes of the Storm was far from the first MOBA to exist, it was the first traditional MOBA to break the status quo, reject the problems that a gold system brings, and pave the way for other games to recognize that these flaws could in fact be addressed. But we've barely scratched the surface of innovations, because Heroes of the Storm didn't just get rid of purchasable items, but replaced them with a new mechanic that had quite a lot of positive effects.
Talent? Ha! That seems generous.
If the Heroes team was going to get rid of the gold system, they were going to have to find something else to replace it. After all, part of the reason many players like gold systems is because they can create and experiment with different item builds each game. And replace it they did, with talents. No, not those, and certainly not that. I'm talking these. Now at certain levels from 1 to 20, you can choose one of several talents to upgrade your hero. These could range from stat boosts to ability enhancements to new abilities altogether. And while many players will have their standard builds, this added so much flexibility to each game you played. Enemy team have a lot of casters? Gain spell armor when you hit your abilities. Assassins keep diving you. Reset your teleport when you take a ton of damage. Need more damage? Build more damage. I think I've made my point here. And because these talents were character specific and couldn't just be bought by any character, the developers had a lot more freedom to balance their game without having a negative impact on other characters. DotA even adopted their own talent system sometime after Heroes of the Storm's release. And while this system was simpler, mostly just choosing between one of 2 stat boosts, it provided one of the most famous MOBAs ever with all of the benefits that it provided Heroes of the Storm. Now, sometime down the line, the developers for Heroes of the Storm created quest talents, which were an immediate success. They didn't provide much of a benefit when you first picked them, but once you completed your goal, they gave you a major power spike. Quests were such a success that almost every hero now has a quest they can choose. Some even have them in their base kit. Plus, they just sound really satisfying, both when you progress through them and when you complete them. I believe this inspired the quest items that were introduced to League of Legends a year afterwards. The thing that makes the concept of quests great no matter what game they're implemented in, though, is that it gives players more chances for skill expression. If you complete your quest in a matter of minutes, you get your reward earlier, and are clearly good at what you're doing. Whereas if it takes you a while, well, there's room for improvement. Speaking of long games...
Whew! Everything's moving so fast, it feels like I'm standing still. Oh, wait.
If you like MOBAs, one of the problems you've probably run into in the past is not having the time to play them. You may not be doing anything right now, sure, but if you have any plans for the rest of the day, there's always that risk that the next game you'll play will cut it just a bit too close. Some games can just be incredibly long. Many different MOBAs feel required to have a surrender feature, just to ensure that if players are having a bad time, that they aren't stuck in a miserable game for half an hour or more. Heroes of the Storm does not have a surrender feature, yet a lot of its games end before other games would even allow you to quit. This is due to several implementations that Heroes of the Storm made to improve the pacing of the traditional MOBA experience. This could honestly be just a 30-minute video on its own, but we're gonna just stick to the things that inspired other games to adopt as well. Hey you! Yeah, you! You like MOBAs? The action? The battles? What about this?
Exhilarating gameplay!
Did you know that players spend 107% of their time in-game just walking around?
Very true fact!
You want to move quicker to get to the action faster? Well, son, you're gonna have to buy these boots for a 0.2% speed boost, because any stronger movement boost you could earn would be way too powerful in combat. But what's this? Could it be? I've heard rumors of a great invention in transportation produced by the greatest minds in all humanity, but I didn't think it actually existed. It does! Now, mounts, at this point, are hardly a new concept, and they are great, because they allow you to travel the map at a much quicker pace than you would just walking around. But the moment you use an ability, make an attack, or take any damage, dismounted. So they let you traverse the map at a quicker pace, get to the action much sooner, but as soon as a fight begins, combat resumes as normal. There's a few exceptions and trade-offs in the game, but for the most part, mounts are a tool that just really help pick up the pace of your games, and definitely aren't just another type of cosmetic to profit off of. Then there's jungle camps. In most MOBAs, the jungle, or the areas between lanes, is just filled with small camps of monsters, and if you kill them, you get a little XP, a little gold, and maybe a small buff for a short amount of time. They're really just in-game to give your team more ways to earn and compete for currency. In Heroes of the Storm, camps equal map pressure. When you arrive at a camp in-game, you peacefully hire them to start pushing lanes for you, and they can push! Take a camp to get an advantage in lane, steal a camp to deny the enemy pressure, or capture one right before an objective to force your opponents into a tough decision. Either way, creating more ways for players to pressure your opponent's buildings can help both teams reach their end objective sooner than they would otherwise. And while adding more means to map pressure can be a scary concept for game developers, we've since seen this concept played with in a few ways, such as Rift Herald here. Finally, let's talk about healing wells for a moment. You know the quickest way to get back into the action? Never leave. Just walk over to your healing well, take a little, and you're back in for round 2. Now you can't just heal indefinitely from them. There is a cooldown for it to be used, and your enemies can destroy them. Which also adds a new level of strategy to the game, because if there's going to be a fight for an objective soon, and their nearby well is destroyed, but yours isn't, you can play a bit safer and out-sustain your opponents. It's just another tool set that helps keep the action of the game moving forward. Now, DotA did add healing wells sometime after Heroes of the Storm's release, but I don't have any footage of them because they were recently removed. My understanding is it didn't blend well with their other mechanics because they could also teleport to them and they couldn't be destroyed. So I sort of understand. That sounds busted. But you want to talk busted? Let's get into the actual main course of MOBAs, because when you get right down to it, the most important thing about a MOBA isn't its economy or what lives in the jungle? Nah, the most important thing about a MOBA is its heroes. Champions? Gods? Characters. Playable characters.
The world could always use more heroes.
When MOBAs have been around releasing character after character for over a decade, it's hard to make a new one that feels absolutely fresh. Credit where it's due to Smite and the other third-person MOBAs, because everything they make feels new since they have an extra axis to play with. But besides that, every possible role in MOBAs seemed already filled to the brim. You had your tanks, your bruisers, your healers, and your losers. Mages, anti-mages, assassins, and your shooters. Every MOBA had a plethora of characters for each of these roles, so all you had to do was find your favorite for each, and you could finish any team comp up nicely. What could Heroes of the Storm provide that was new or interesting? Well, turns out a lot. The developers were constantly looking for ways to break the status quo and make fun, new hero designs. They made multiple heroes that could be controlled by a single player. Then they made a single hero controlled by multiple players. They made a slug who can put himself on another player, amplifying them. They made a hero that can choose one of several forms to take, changing his stats and abilities. They made a tank. Not like a tanky, beefy character, a literal tank. They made a healing sniper, a raid boss, a fish that can respawn wherever on the map he wants. I'm already Tracer, the most fun ability ever. The bug laying eggs in your bathroom right now. I'm a firing my laser and Deathwing. That's right, the aspect of death, the world breaker. There is nothing they could put in this game more powerful, more terrifying, more evil than him.
I am having the worst case of lockjaw right now.
And despite how crazy this all seems, it's all relatively balanced. Now, if you play other MOBAs, some of these concepts I listed might not sound unique anymore. Like I said earlier, this isn't a call-out video, though if you could allow me, just this once, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. You're gonna tell me Heroes hasn't inspired any other games? But it's not just the flashy, unique characters that stand out. Even the characters in Heroes of the Storm that we've basically seen before are affected by what I'd like to call MOBA power creep. Remember what I was saying earlier about how item systems make it harder to balance your characters? Well, since Heroes of the Storm doesn't have an item system, and no one is ever going to have bought ludicrous amounts of damage or anything, the developers have a lot more freedom to put more power into the base kit of their heroes. You know how Kale can give you a shield that makes you immune to all damage? Well, Uther here can do that too, but it also makes you immune to crowd control, and he doesn't have to channel it. You know how Sona's ult can force your opponents to dance for a short bit? Well, ETC can do that in all directions from him, for 4 seconds straight. You know how Skarner can just click on someone and drag them wherever he pleases? Well, Dahaka's is actually a short-range skill shot with a slight delay. But it's not his ult. It's a basic ability on a 15-second cooldown, even shorter depending on your build. This is all really just another point on why moving away from the imbalance of gold systems is a smart decision, which means we've come full circle and are almost done here.
No, no more of this. I'm a conqueror, not an entertainer.
Now before I end this, there's one final point I want to make. It's less of something I think Heroes directly inspired, and more something that Heroes benefited from that I'm glad other games are doing now. When a new hero was released in Heroes of the Storm, it was different. I like to compare it to character releases in Super Smash Bros. You were excited for characters you already knew about and loved to be playable in your game. I'm still waiting on Reinhardt. There's a different level of hype to trying to predict and theory craft the kits and abilities of characters you already cared about, instead of just waiting for a new release. And I'm glad that other MOBAs have begun building their lore, characters, and relationships, so that their players can have this great experience as well. So that about wraps it up. Thanks for sticking with me through all this. Here's the Storm has just been a great game throughout the years, and I just wanted to make sure it got the recognition it deserves for how it has affected a lot of other popular games. I suggest trying it out if you haven't. Despite its esports scene getting shut down, it still gets balance patches and new heroes. I know a lot of people aren't happy with Blizzard, and yes, Activision is capable of ruining everything it touches, but the developers for Heroes of the Storm still put a lot of love and effort into the game, and it can be really fun to just screw around with your friends in, or, if you're good, maybe you can compete in a community league, who knows? If you want to learn more about the game, there's still a lot of great content creators out there who dedicate time and effort into it, who can teach you a lot, and often entertain along the way.
Okay, we're fine.
Many of their links are up on screen now, and will also be down in the description below. Thanks so much for watching. Poggers for Hoggers. And maybe, just maybe, I'll see you all in the Nexus.